Thank you so much, Randy, and thank you and welcome everyone here today. First of all, Randy, not only thank you for the kind introduction, but thank you for what you do as being the president of SUMA, running to be the president of SUMA, and the leadership that you provide our municipalities, and that leadership that you provide our urban municipalities across the province alongside your board members, and my equal thanks goes to them. A number of colleagues from the legislature have joined us here today. I welcome them as well, and most importantly, I welcome all of you as our urban municipal representatives from across the province, and I thank you for what you do each and every day in your community, making your community a better place and advocating on behalf of the needs in your community, but also advocating on and identifying where the opportunities may be. As you know, about a month ago, or a few weeks ago, I spoke at the SUMA convention here in Regina as well, and I think you're going to hear many of the same themes today that we did at that point in time. The theme of a government in the province that's focused on growth, focused on investment, both attracting private investment but also making equal public investments, and certainty. Certainty for the residents that we collectively represent across this province in all of our communities. And I would say that we also are associated with representing across the nation of Canada. So growth, investment, and certainty are really going to be the themes of what I want to discuss here today, and the themes of what our government is focused on in the days ahead. So I'll begin by just maybe a few comments about with respect to the current state of where we are in Saskatchewan today. A few years ago, we updated our growth plan. In 2012, we had came out with a growth plan that was a vision out to 2020 for this province, a growth plan that was consulted on with you and others. We updated that a number of years ago, and even just today, we are meeting or even exceeding some of the targets that we had put forward in that most recent growth plan that we had hoped to achieve by the time we got to the year 2030. Now, growth isn't a word that you heard a whole lot about in this province prior to about 16 years ago. And you still don't hear it as much as I would like to hear it at the federal level today. But for the last 16 years, you've seen a couple of leaders and many ministers stand on stages like this and talk about this government's commitment to facilitating growth in our communities, in our industries, and facilitating the opportunities that come with said growth. And we're starting to see those results. Our population growth in this province is at historic levels today. There's now, as of 8 o'clock this morning, 1,232,390 people that call a Saskatchewan community their home. That is important because that is the most ever, and tomorrow I expect will be higher than that, and that will be the most ever individuals that have called a Saskatchewan community home. Today, our rate of growth into the province, rate of people that are staying in the province, is at its greatest level ever, pardon me, not ever, but in the last 110 years, so for me, that's ever. Our population this past year grew by over 30,000 people. We will reach, quite likely, 1,250,000 people this calendar year living in the province of Saskatchewan. And on those people that are arriving here, they're working in our communities. There's 30,000 jobs that have been created in Saskatchewan since 2020. 10,500 of those jobs came just in the last 12 months alone. With those and creating those jobs is capital investment that is being invested in communities and near communities across this province. In fact, our capital investment this last year was up 25%. What that has done is ranked us second in the nation when it comes to attracting capital investment, and the forecast for the current year that we're already a quarter of the way through is for Saskatchewan's capital investment attraction to increase yet another 15%. That will put us first in the nation when it comes to capital investment coming into our communities, creating jobs, and furthering that growth agenda that we have. In addition to that, and partially probably the reason behind that capital investment is the value of our exports. The value of Saskatchewan exports, and this is an important number when you consider that 70% of everything we do is reliant on exporting, 1.2 million people exporting to over 150 nations around the world. This is the source of our wealth in our communities. If you're not working in an export-related business, you're likely serving those that do. And the values of our exports since 2018 in Saskatchewan are up 70%. Not the production, but the actual value of what we are exporting. So we are exporting not only more products, but we are exporting far higher value products than we did even just 5 short years ago. So many other economic indicators are up in our communities, and we see this on a daily basis, and sometimes we take it for granted. And so it saves me to mention it here today. Our agricultural food exports, up. Our crop production is up. Despite some areas experiencing a drought for multiple years, overall our crop production continues to increase. Our value-added processing is up in the province, and investment in that space is significant. Our mining industry is strong. Investment in that space is significant. Our energy industry is continuing to attract investment. The list goes on and on and on of the industries that are performing well in this province and performing above their counterparts in like industries across the nation and around the world. And I bring this up as to say, for me to say, why does this matter, or why is this important to you in this room? It's because growth indicates a strong and resilient economy, and it's through the strength of that economy that we're able to make investments. Whether that be a provincial government, we use the strength of our provincial economy to make investments on your behalf. Whether it be at the municipal level, at the community level, you use the equal strength of your economy to make those investments on behalf of to provide the services on behalf of the people that you serve. Now, there are challenges that come with this type of growth. We face those at the provincial level. And I know that everyone in this room is encountering like challenges, those same challenges of growth in your own communities. But my question to you today would be this. Would you rather face those challenges of growth, or would you rather face challenges of declining growth? And we know what those can be, those challenges of decline. It can be a shrinking population in your community, in your province, in your nation, a smaller tax base which will not help you pay for the services that people expect to be provided. Be people leaving this province. Some of them are children for opportunities that may exist elsewhere, and we've seen that in our province in years gone by. It may be businesses not investing back into their community. But I would say today we are in a much stronger place. A stronger place due to the strength of our economy. We are able to make those investments. A strong and growing economy means that we can invest, and invest heavily at times. Today, most of what I want to discuss is very much pertinent to the provincial budget that was released a couple of weeks ago, and how that provincial budget is working and investing to address some of these challenges that we mutually face. But as we know, the federal budget is going to be released tomorrow, and I want to make essentially 2 comments on the federal budget. First, we agree with your organization wholeheartedly that the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, or the ISIP program, it needs to be reloaded with funds so that provinces and municipalities can co-invest in building the communities where each of us live. ISIP and any other relevant transfers, investment transfers like the gas tax return, they need to remain as flexible as possible so that each community can continue to meet their specific challenges that they may have, the specific challenges that they may have in a growing community. Second, certainty needs to be restored for families in your community, my community, and across this nation. And we need to start with the removal of the consumer carbon tax on everything for everyone. It does nothing but create higher costs for Saskatchewan and Canadian families. It does nothing but create higher costs for Saskatchewan and Canadian businesses, thereby declining that opportunity and that investment attraction opportunity that businesses may have, as well as it does nothing but increase the cost for Saskatchewan and Canadian communities, and you'll be seeing that as well. I would say that this will be my ask of the federal government tomorrow. Canadians will receive good news. This would be option number 1. Canadians would receive good news in the way of increased community infrastructure investment and no carbon tax. My suspicion and my fear is that the federal government is going to provide Canadians with no community infrastructure funding and an increased carbon tax. In the past number of weeks, we have seen the federal government that has been pretty clear in signaling just this, that there will be no new municipal infrastructure funding, and that the federal funds that were in our community infrastructure programs like ISIP and the gas tax refund, those are going to be redirected to specific housing programs that are, let's call it, directed essentially at 3 of the largest communities in this nation. This is not the way for us to build a prosperous and affordable community in our province, and I would say largely across this nation. This is not the way forward in building prosperous and affordable communities for Canadians, and it's not the way to build a nation for that matter. If that's what we see in tomorrow's budget, you can expect our government to be very, very vocal in voicing our concerns, and I would encourage SUMA and your municipality to be equal in that. Back to the province, the things that we can control. Our budget, which was released a couple of weeks ago, the 24-25 provincial budget, was released by our Deputy Premier, the Minister of Finance, the Honourable Donna Harpower. You saw the availability of that investment into our communities. That commitment from your provincial government to continue to invest into your community and every community in this province. The growth in our economy, the growth over the last number of years, in particular the last couple of years, has led to a record level of municipal revenue sharing this year. It's up 14%, $42 million. A total now of $340 million is going to be transferred through that no-strings-attached municipal revenue sharing program to our municipalities this year. That is only due to the strength and growth of the Saskatchewan economy. I would remind you of this revenue sharing formula that we have in this province. And I would say that it's imperative in addressing the growth that we see, that you see at your community or municipal council table. This revenue sharing formula stands alone in the nation of Canada. No other province has an agreement like we have here. And for those of you that attend FCM conventions, I would encourage you to ask if there is one. It's stable, it's predictable, it was asked for by you, and there are no strings attached to it. Since 2008 now, over $4.3 billion in provincial revenue sharing has gone to your communities and all communities across this province, and I think that's something collectively, as a province of Saskatchewan, we can be very, very proud of. That increase in revenue sharing, I think we can look at that as the very gauge, or the litmus test, if you will, of how our provincial economy is performing, how our provincial economy is doing. Is it expanding? Is it retracting? And I would say that it then thereby allows you to use those dollars and invest in your communities. It directly helps everyone in this room meet the challenges and opportunities of growth. And I would say once again that this investment, this $342 million this year, over $4.3 billion since its inception in 2008, it's only possible. It's only possible when you have a strong, vibrant, growing, and prosperous economy. At budget time, and you'll hear me here today talk about a lot of numbers. There's numbers and there's facts and there's figures, and that's really all we talk about when it comes to budget time. But make no mistake on this, budgets are so much more than just those numbers and those facts and those figures. Budgets are about people. Most importantly, budgets are about people. Your budget or the provincial budget. People in Saskatchewan who expect and deserve a quality education. People in Saskatchewan who expect and deserve access to quality health care. And people in Saskatchewan who expect and deserve to be able to live in a healthy and safe community. Budgets are about people that are contributing to those very communities, to contributing to our economy. People who are busy building bright futures for themselves and their families. And that's why the focus on this year's budget has been very specific. It's about classrooms, it's about care, and it's about communities. In addition to the 14% increase that we saw in municipal revenue sharing, as I said, is the very gauge of how our provincial economy is performing. Through the strength of that very economy, we were able to invest and invest substantially in our education budget. Our education budget was up 9% this year, up $180 million, the operational budget that will be transitioned or transferred to school divisions for a total of $2.2 billion. As I said, that's up 9%. Again, that's only possible due to the strength of a strong and growing economy. That brings our education budget to the highest per capita education budget in the nation of Canada. What that means is that you and you and you and each of us as families in this province, we invest more per person in Saskatchewan in education than in any other province or any other region across the nation, and that collectively I think is something that we can be proud of as well. We recently announced an updated funding model in education to address the pressures from enrollment growth, and I'm going to comment on that in just a minute. There was a specialized support classroom pilot program which was established a few months ago to support the best learning environment in our classrooms across the province. Funding has been provided to support our educators, our teachers, through the Teacher Innovation and Support Fund, again, so that they have input on that learning environment. And as we have in the past, we will continue to invest in new and improved schools across this great province in community after community. You've seen those investments in your community or one near you with 65 new and replacement schools that have been built over the last 16 years. There's 32 significant renovations that have occurred, and in this budget just a few weeks ago, there is the announcement of 9 additional schools that are going to be built in Saskatchewan and 2 significant renovations. I want to just talk for one moment about one of those schools and about how quickly and aggressively our population is increasing. On the east side of Saskatoon, there's a joint use high school being built either in the Brighton neighborhood or nearby. That school, I remember growing up, I grew up in the community of Shelbrook, Saskatchewan. Next to us, 25 miles away, was a community, the city of Prince Albert. I remember Carleton High School in Prince Albert. It had 2,000, give or take a couple hundred kids in it, in a high school. For many years, it was the largest high school in the province of Saskatchewan, and coming from our community where we had about 400 or 500 kids in the entire school system, never mind just the high school, I always looked into that and I thought, man, that is a big school. I sure don't want to play them in football. On the east side of Saskatoon, in that Brighton neighborhood, there's a joint use school facility that is going to be constructed that is going to be able to be the learning environment for 3,600 students. That is an indicator of how quickly our population is growing in our communities. It's also an indicator why you're seeing the significant investment that you see today in the education space. Because inside those very classrooms, inside those schools, we need to make sure that we have the resources so that our students, who are also our children, are able to learn and thrive. That's why you're seeing increased supports for classroom learning. You're seeing increased supports for our educators. You're seeing increased supports in the number of educational assistants that are available. On all of those increased supports, you're seeing the variability for us to allow our local school divisions and their boards to be able to make the decisions that are right for their schools, to be able to make the decisions that are right for their classrooms, and ultimately to make the decisions that are in the best interest of the students that are in those classrooms. A 9% lift in school operational funding is only possible due to the strength of a growing economy. When it comes to health care, and I'm sure there will be no questions in the bear pit on health care, like every other year. We're facing challenges in our healthcare system here in Saskatchewan. I would say that those challenges that we're facing in Saskatchewan are not exclusive to Saskatchewan. I jump on a call every week or two with the other 12 premiers from across the nation, and I can assure you that the challenges in healthcare in a post-pandemic world are across this nation and are not exclusive to Saskatchewan. Every province is dealing with them, and we're trying to do what we can to work together to share solutions, and equally as important to share things that didn't work so we don't try it in other areas. Do not do this. Do not doubt our commitment as a government to finding those solutions and funding those solutions as we move through this time. In this budget, we have increased funding for healthcare by well over 10%, just 1 year, and that's a big budget. That's a big line item in our budget. You compare that to the negotiation that all provincial premiers had with the federal government when we asked them to move from a 19 or 20% share of our provincial health budgets to 35% share, which is where it was at the inception of the Canada Health Transfer so many years ago. They provided 2.6% increase each year over the next 5 years. What you're seeing in provinces, and the province of Saskatchewan specifically, is over 10%. This increase brings our total healthcare budget to $7.6 billion a year. And I would say that that's a lot of money as a line item in our our provincial budget. And I would say that the expectations now of the government of Saskatchewan, and I would say the expectations of your municipality, I would hope, and the expectations of Saskatchewan families are this, that with that funding, that the Saskatchewan Health Authority delivers the healthcare services that Saskatchewan families expect. And we have access in or near our community that we expect. And we expect that the Saskatchewan Health Authority will make solid decisions with not only the base funding that they have, but this large increase that they have this year on where they invest those dollars, so that we have the right people in the right places. And I'll make a comment on that in a moment. So that we have our surgery wait times being addressed and coming down. And I'll comment on that in a moment. And so that the Saskatchewan Health Authority is able to make the investments to make the lives of Saskatchewan people better. That's the goal. A few years ago, I would say that our government had put forward a Health Human Resource Action Plan. I've said many times it's the most ambitious Health Human Resource Action Plan in the nation of Canada. The investments and the decisions that have been made and funded, with over $100 million of funding provided specifically to that plan, we're starting to see results. We're seeing more doctors and more nurses hired, more medical professionals hired into the Saskatchewan Health Authority in your community or one near you. Just this last year, there's been over 1,000 Canadian nursing grads that have entered and are working in our healthcare facilities across Canada. You add to that 400 Filipino nursing grads that have been offered positions. 170 of them are actually in a Saskatchewan healthcare facility in a community today, offering healthcare services. And so we are finding our way on the Health Human Resource Plan in hiring medical health professionals, most notably among them nurses. We're expanding the scope of many of the medical professionals that we have, and paramount among that is expanding the scope of nurse practitioners. Nurse practitioners are now running clinics on their own, independently of physicians. One open in Warman and one coming very shortly in Martensville. We've added beds and capacity to our hospitals. And we're building new hospitals in Prince Albert and in Weyburn, and planning now underway in Yorkton and in Rostern and in Esterhazy. And I would say this, wait times are starting to come down. In fact, wait times for surgeries in Saskatchewan are coming down, and they're down 23% over the course of the last 24 months. It doesn't feel like that when you're waiting for a surgery, but they are down 23%. And I would say for a couple of reasons. One, in part, that very ambitious Health Human Resource Action Plan that I had mentioned that is bringing more medical professionals to work in our hospitals. Some of those are helping us reduce our surgical wait times. And in part, and I make no apologies for this second part, this is a government that is not tied in any way to rigid ideologies on how we are going to offer healthcare services to Saskatchewan residents. We're open to pursuing paths that lead to better and faster care for our residents, whether it be in our surgical initiative, whether it be in how we deliver mental health and all too often subsequent addictions care. We've seen improvement in the surgical wait times with the help of publicly funded but privately delivered surgery clinics that are operating in a number of communities. And here is the numbers. Through the past 9 months, from April to December of this, the 3 quarters of this last fiscal year, what we are seeing is 72,000 surgeries have been performed. That's up 6,000 from the year before. It's a record on a record. And we are on track to achieve our target, our goal, which is 100,000 surgeries this year. The target is for 90% of procedures to be done within 10 months. So people don't have to wait so long for the care that they need, and we're on track to exceed that target, to meet it and to exceed it. And again, I would say that 10% increase in investment, that also important investment in access to quality health care in our communities across this province, it's only possible due to the strength of a growing economy. When it comes to those that are facing mental health challenges, and all too often subsequent addictions challenges, and I want to talk about addiction specifically. We've been very clear the last number of months. We do not believe that government should help people continue to use illegal drugs. We believe that government's role is one that helps those very people move away from the use of illegal drugs, in particular, those illegal drugs that are available in our nation today. There is no such thing today as the safe use of illegal drugs. A few months ago, we we had announced our 5-year action plan for mental health and addictions. ROSC was the word of the day. ROSC stands for Recovery-Oriented System of Care. First, when it comes to a ROSC care delivery system, we need capacity. Where once there was a number of one-off supports, there is now a very focused and coordinated plan when it comes to offering addiction supports. It includes a significant increase in the number of intensive recovery beds that are available across this province. And these are new beds, of which 5 years ago we had virtually none. You all know we had a target of creating 150 of these intensive recovery beds. We were able to meet that target in this past year. We've extended that target to 500 beds now, well on our way to meeting the 500-bed target, and I don't think 500 is going to be the end of the conversation. We are going to need to continue building to provide those opportunities for our community members and all too often our family members that may have entered a life of addictions and want to make a change. We need to have the capacity to provide them that intensive addictions recovery support, and we're building it. Second, you need access. You need to be able to get one. You need to be able to get into the system to provide the supports that you may need, and you need them today. When you make that decision, you can't be told to come back next Thursday. Part of that access to those addiction supports you're seeing on North Albert Street here, and I'd encourage you to drive by it in Regina on North Albert Street on your way to your hotel or on your way out of town when you leave, if you live north of the city, and if not, detour by it. You're seeing the construction of the urgent care center. Part of that urgent care center, part of that footprint is, yes, to see as many urgent folks, people that have urgent health care issues, but maybe not emergent, doesn't belong in the emergency center, but can't wait for 10 days to see their primary care provider. You can go to the urgent care center and see whatever that ailment might be, whether it's you or your family member, immediately, without being in the emergency room. The second part, and maybe less talked about part, of these urgent care centers, the one is constructed, actually complete, the construction is complete in Regina and will be opening this summer, and a very similar one is coming in Saskatoon as soon as we're able to get it constructed. But the second part of that is to be an intake for those that may be having a mental health crisis or have entered a life of addictions and are ready to make a change. An emergency room is for life-threatening health conditions, and it's not the right place for people that are struggling with addictions. We know that in this city all too well. So the urgent care center there is going to offer this 24-hour mental health and addictions care to support anyone in need, and going to take them by the hand and provide them with the medical health professional that they require, or ultimately to provide them with one of the intensive recovery beds that we are currently constructing the capacity for. And you can see how this 5-year mental health and addictions plan, this recovery-oriented system of care, is starting to come together. You need access, and behind that access, you ultimately need the capacity. Investments like this are only possible, and I say only possible, and they're not being made anywhere else in Canada. They're only possible through the strength of a growing economy. And while we need to continue to care for all of those vulnerable folks that we may have in our communities through providing that recovery-focused system of care, we must also have a parallel focus. We must focus on getting illicit drugs out of our community and off our streets. You know all too well, many of you in this room, and I've seen it, the effects that these illegal activities and these illegal drugs have in our communities, whether it's direct in the drugs themselves or whether it's associated property crime. This year's budget continues to commit and commits record funding to our RCMP, to our municipal police services, and to our provincially coordinated enforcement officers as well. And we remain in this province committed to all levels of enforcement, our RCMP, our municipal police forces in the 7 communities that have those, but we also remain committed to funding the Saskatchewan Marshal Service, which will be operational by 2026, and it doesn't replace any of the aforementioned enforcement agencies that we have, nor will it be in competition for provincial funding. Instead, the Marshals is there to support our municipal police services when it is needed. Our Marshals will be there 70 men deep to support our RCMP, whether that be in presence or whether that be in actual action, when it is required. They're there to support our other law enforcement agencies, and they're there to support your community. That investment is only possible due to the strength of a growing economy. I mentioned earlier at the outset, certainty. And when we talk about the strength of a growing economy and the benefits of living in a community in the province of Saskatchewan, behind it all is really certainty. Our continued economic growth, which is the currency of which we make investments locally or provincially. Being able to answer the call of our citizens, the call that they may have on you to invest, the call that those very citizens may have on their provincial government to invest. That all requires certainty. And the best way for us to frighten away investment in our province is to sow the seeds of uncertainty. You've heard me talk before about a number of federal policies. I'm not going to talk about them a lot today. But there's regulations and legislation that are happening at the federal level that, quite frankly, not only hurt Saskatchewan residents, but hurt all Canadians by extensions, by creating uncertainty and by threatening the opportunity we have for ongoing economic growth. You have the clean electricity regulations. We have the clean fuel standard. We have the fertilizer reduction regulations. We have the oil and gas emissions cap. We have the methane regulations. And on top of all of it, you have an imposed federal carbon tax. So I'm not going to take a lot of time today to outline each of these policies, but let me say this. All of those measures, and each of those measures, can cause uncertainty in this great province. They cause uncertainty across Canada, and I would say that they are causing uncertainty that Canadians quite simply can't afford today. It causes uncertainty for our producers, whether it be oil producers, whether it be agricultural producers. It causes uncertainty for our manufacturers, for our miners. It causes uncertainty for those that are looking to invest in Saskatchewan, and I would say eventually all of those policies, or each of those policies, cause uncertainty for all of us that live in Saskatchewan. The success of businesses and industries, it's vital to ensuring the continued growth in our economy. It's vital for us to continue to talk about the investments that I have discussed here today. And I would add this, that those investments, they're not just adding buildings and jobs. They are doing that, and that's very important, and that is the focus. But their success also means that they are directly investing into your community. And we've seen a number of those in recent weeks. We saw BHP make a significant investment into the Saskatoon Food Bank. We saw Nutrien make a significant investment to Sask Polytechnic to advance the building of their new college campus in Saskatoon. We're seeing the Remay family do a like investment. We've seen investments into Stars Air Ambulance. We've seen investments into our local hospital foundations. We've seen provincial charities that do very, very well in this province per capita, better than anywhere else in the nation. Charities like Telemerica, where you see the entire Saskatchewan business community and individuals coming together to invest in families. You've seen these investments in your community. You've seen them across the province. Sponsorship of community events funding to help build and maintain hockey arenas, other recreational infrastructure. And you have my commitment to this, that we will continue to build certainty for all of those that are looking to invest in your community. You need to be equally as committed to providing that very certainty that allows you to do your part in attracting that investment to our great province and to, I would say, our great nation. Because that investment leads to increased revenue. It leads to increased jobs and careers in your community, whether they be direct or indirect jobs. It leads to increased opportunities for Saskatchewan families that allows us to all work together and work collaboratively in building this great province. Investments that lead to opportunities for each and every Saskatchewan resident. Investments that will continue to attract newcomers to Saskatchewan and, I would say, equally or more importantly, offer our children the opportunity to stay here. It's investments that we, as I said, are leading the nation in. Investments that are building that strong and prosperous economy that I have mentioned here today. And part of that very certainty that we require, part of that very certainty is provided, or needs to be provided at the federal level. Part of it needs to be provided at the provincial level. But part of it also needs to be provided by each of you in this room, through our local governments. And I'm here today to close by saying this. Thank you. Thank you to each of you, and collectively to all of you, for being such great partners with us as your provincial government as we continue to, yes, meet the challenges of growth, but also enjoy in the opportunities that that growth provides the residents that we collectively serve, and that is the people and families of this great province. I'm wishing you the very best in your SUMA conference this week. Thank you.